Hey all, here at OS Reviews. In this video we're doing just a very quick follow-up and slash update of the Samsung Galaxy A10e here in 2020. And the phone has now received a software update, so it's running on Android 10.0 with Samsung One UI 2.0. We can confirm this under the phone settings. One UI 2.0, Android version 10.0, which is the latest version of Android. It's actually quite impressive to see on a budget phone. It came out about a year ago and ran on Android 9.0, and of course budget phones tend to have a pretty poor reputation for software updates, so to see a slight improvement here, it's impressive. A flagship from 2 years back, which is still not running on Android 10 or One UI 2.0. So kudos to Samsung there for supporting such a low-cost phone, and there's quite a few new tricks that come with One UI 2.0, including changeable wallpapers that are dynamic each time that you turn on and off the display to make it feel a bit more fresh. It's not anything new, of course. There's other custom launchers that do that. I think Huawei's EMUI has been doing that for a while now as well, but it's still nice to see. Now, one thing I do want to point out is not everyone has received updates to 10.0 over the air. From what I've heard, there are certain carriers such as TracFone which have actually not pushed the OTA update yet, even though the phone technically supports it, and all the unlocked and international versions of the A10 and A10e have received it, which is unfortunate. But there is a pretty easy way to bypass that and still get your phone updated to 10.0. All you need to do is visit Samsung's website and download a version of their PC companion tool, which is known as Smart Switch. You would download that onto your computer and then connect the phone by USB onto your computer, and afterwards it will recognize it and ask you if you want to install any updates or back up your files. It will then send that file over to the phone, and the update will take about 15 minutes to 20 minutes to fully download and install. So it's still very easy, and there is still an official way to do that. You just have to install an application on your PC to make that process happen, as opposed to being over the air, which it was supposed to be. So that's a little unfortunate that certain carriers are not enforcing these updates or choosing not to do that. It's a little bit shady and forcing customers to maybe pick a newer phone and make a purchase. Anyways, returning back to this phone now on this up-to-date version of the software, I wanted to revisit it. The performance still holds up pretty nicely for a budget phone. Again, we're talking for around $100 or so. I think it's going to be a competitor to a newer device from Samsung these days known as the A01. That is the 2020 cheapest smartphone from Samsung. But if we put the A01 and A10e next to each other, the A10e does have slightly better design and specifications in my opinion. The bezels, for example, on the A10e are a little bit slimmer, especially on the left and right sides. This phone definitely feels and looks more expensive than the price would suggest. I'm not going to repeat all of the specifications since that's still the same as on our original review and unboxing, but we do have overall a very saturated looking screen that is an IPS LCD at HD plus resolution. One UI 2.0 also allows you to customize the colors of various folders, so there's some additional levels of personalization beyond what stock Android provides. So in this example, I've colored TracFone red, Samsung I've colored green, but you can do that by selecting the color dot on the top there and then choosing the color using this wheel. In terms of interaction and usability though, the phone is still very similar to Android 9.0, just because Samsung's One UI 1.0 already brought along with it most of the system gestures in addition to controls like a dark mode, which Samsung had already implemented one generation early compared to stock Android. So now we still have things like a universal dark mode, but the functionality is mostly the same compared to before. There's going to be some slight changes to some of the icons, and there's some new animations, like changing the screen brightness. We now have a dial that kind of magnifies itself when we're pulling ourselves along. And again, all the gestures for navigation and multitasking remains pretty similar. That has still been customized by Samsung compared to stock Android. It's also kind of interesting that the applications can float around and you can actually exit it and it can fly in any direction off the screen compared to before, where it tended to just be a simple up and down movement. Otherwise, running the show here as a refresher, it's still using the Exynos 7884, which is an octa-core chipset, and actually works quite well. It's actually surprisingly capable CPU for the super budget price that the phone can be found at, around 50 to 60 bucks if you shop around. So just incredible value for the money. A10e. The Snapdragon equivalent of the 7884 octa-core would be close to the Snapdragon 630 or 660 in between those, which is to say performance overall for things like navigation is actually still very responsive, and certainly you won't find any issues or hiccups when it comes to just using the UI, opening up applications, things like that. The RAM is a little on the low side. It comes in at just 2 gigabytes, which for 2020 is definitely no longer amazing, but overall it's not too bad either if you're conscious of closing out of background applications. Perhaps the camera is the area which has seen the most updates on newer generations of Samsung phones. That's where the A10e is showing its age a little bit. Past year, budget phones from Samsung still had just one sensor, and it was an 8 megapixel affair, compared to this year where even budget phones are starting to have dual camera systems and above. So that creates special modes such as bokeh, even for budget phones, whereas on this, it's as simple as it gets. It's just a point and shoot. But overall, it still works well enough, even though it's not a crazy resolution. It still captures satisfactory shots, I'd say, for the budget price. The interface is slightly changed compared to Android 9.0. The text looks a little bit different in terms of their font size, and we have a digital zoom option that can zoom up to 2 times, but it's not using, say, telephoto or optical sensors to do that. The camera functions are still mostly the same, it's just the way that it looks using the software has been slightly tweaked. The 3000 milliamp hour pack is still a little bit on the small side, but it can still get you through a day's use really without too many problems. And certainly it didn't degrade too much in my testing and usage. So that's more or less it as far as just our very quick update on the Samsung Galaxy A10e here in 2020. Is it worth it? I would say definitely is. For under $100, it remains an excellent value with a great display and a pretty powerful CPU for the price that can handle things like web browsing, watching videos, playing back some lighter games and titles without any problems at all, and offers, again, a design that still looks more expensive than the price would suggest. So in the past year, the A10e actually hasn't really degraded, at least in my opinion, when it comes to its position as a great low-cost phone. In fact, still probably is the best cheap Samsung smartphone that you can buy. I find the specs, in addition to the design, to still look a little better than the A01, which is their new device for the year, and at the moment the A01 still sells for a slightly higher price just because it's newer as well. But for now, that's been our video. Just a quick update on the A10e here running on Android 10.0 with Samsung One UI 2.0.